welcome to another edition of Sales Conversations with Sales Experts. So it's an absolute privilege to get this man in the car with me. This is a really good friend of mine who I've been wanting to get in the car for a while, knows his sales stuff inside out, built an incredible business which he also then sold a couple of years ago. So no better chance than my good friend David Harris. Come on in the car. How are you, mate?
Hi, Jimmo.
How you doing, bud?
Not bad, how are you?
Are you nervous about spending a few moments in the car with me?
Well, I've got no problem at all in having something recorded, but I do have known you for a long time, and you are not the world's best driver, so that's the thing that I'm nervous about.
Exactly,
yeah,
rightly so, mate.
Sure
Rightly
right.
so. But no, it's good. Look, so for those, everyone's watching the video, they'll be thinking, who is this man? So talk to people a bit about your sales career, because you've been, when we left university, so I should introduce, Dave's a friend, me and Dave have known each other for 20 odd years now, and we left university at a similar time, and Dave went and did a number of different sales jobs really at the time, wasn't it? And then we'll talk through some of those, and then built your business, which you then sold a few years ago. But talk to me about how you got into sales, because you started doing sales at, was it Maztec? Was that when it started?
No, before that actually.
Was it?
So yeah, so when we left uni in '97, I fell into a recruitment role. So I didn't even really know it was sales actually. I thought, oh, it's HR related, which was kind of my degree. So I'll do this recruitment role, and I realised kind of day one that it was pretty hardcore sales. And at first I didn't like it. I was like, oh my God, this isn't me at all. But I did put my head down and learnt a bit of a process, and actually worked out that if I applied myself, I could be reasonably good at it.
I remember, because those boys used to, because we used to do some events and stuff, and they used to have real like flash cars, wouldn't they? They were earning a lot of money.
That was hardcore, head down on the phone, banging away, and you know, if you got it right, you can make a lot of money. And I did well out of it. I did really well out of that. It didn't excite me, but I knew that actually, if you applied a process, you could do well.
When you say you did well then, so one of the things about this, I do these video series, it's about trying to share with people that have been and done sales and made success of it, because business isn't easy, you know that. You've built a business and built businesses, and you know it's not easy for people to go through this. What was the sort of secret? I guess in recruitment, it is about hard work, but
yeah.
What were the secrets, you think, to make, how you and the other guys, I remember some of the guys that I met were incredibly successful. Was it just hard work, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, in that particular sales role, it was very much about actually just getting the numbers, right. I mean, there was a process. There was absolutely, you had to think about what you were doing. You had to listen to the customer. You had to engage in the right way. You had to build that reputation and relationship with them. But in that particular aspect, it was very much about just getting the numbers. As time went by in my career, and I did other sales roles, things changed a little bit. But in that particular role,
so how many calls would they expect you to make per day? Or did they set you like a target number?
Yeah, I mean, they're going back a while now, aren't we? So, but I mean, at least 100, 150 calls a day, and you would expect out of those to have, I don't know, a 10% success rate, and from those, hopefully, other business would come. And in the early days, it was hard yards. It was really, really difficult building new customers. But as time went by, you built up a few, and you built that trust and relationship with certain customers, and it kind of went from there.
150 calls a day. Wow, it just shows, doesn't it? And then, because from there, did you go to Maztec? Was that?
Yeah, so I lasted 18 months there. As I say, did really well. I did enjoy it.
Remember the MGF? Remember that old MGF?
Yeah, that's right. I bought a nice car out of that. That was quite good. But I didn't find it satisfying. Yeah. And I wanted to get into something that was much more kind of solutions-based sales.
That's right.
So then I moved to an IT company, and that was much more about selling services and building a kind of a relationship with the customer on a much broader basis. So that was much more kind of face-to-face. That was getting out and about. That was working, with different teams and trying to understand which buyer, had what type of influence on the.
We're going to share a story in a minute, which is a brilliant story. I use it because it always makes me laugh. The 7-minute meeting, so we can talk about that in a sec. But so when you're at Maztec, obviously you were selling IT services into people. one of the things that I always talk to people about when is about the problem and the issues. What were the issues that most of because that was at the early stages of outsourcing as well, wasn't it? In those stages. So did you find it hard trying to get people to buy into the idea of outsourcing services, or was it quite easy?
I think there was a general trend in the industry moving towards outsourcing. Not many companies had considered looking at doing it offshore, which is what we were offering. So we were kind of introducing the idea to different companies that this might work for them, and some took it up and some didn't. But the ones that took it up, you started to go on a bit of a journey, really, and in most cases found quite a lot of value in the early phases. So often you would build a relationship with the clients, really small to begin with, and then it would grow quite quickly.
And that's something you've actually, I know you've done that incredibly well over the time when you've built your own company as well, is that element of building relationships, isn't it? And being able to sort of, you can't do business straight away. You've got to be in a position where you start to nurture and engage people and then work with them over a period of time. You're not going to do business straight away.
No, I've always been a massive fan of trying to engage with a customer on a kind of small basis to begin with, and then over time, once you've proven how valuable you can be, then grow it off the back of that. So it's really, really hard to get new customers. So once you've got them, you really need to look after them, and growing them is not easier, but the scope for bringing bigger income as a result of an existing relationship is much, much higher than gaining a new client and gaining as much. So
it's difficult though, because a lot of people want, I don't know about you when you talk to, because I know we'll talk about how you've got to where you mentor people now and you support people. It's difficult though, isn't it? Because a lot of businesses want that immediacy of a customer. They want someone straight away. It's like, oh well, I'm gonna get business straight away. Well, actually, we all know it doesn't happen straight away. You got to work for it. You've got to be resilient. You've got to push for things. And if you don't do the work, you don't get the results. And I guess it's sort of a challenge for a lot of businesses to know how to do that when they're short of targets or they're not hitting the number and they want to get to that place. And you've got to put the work in, haven't you?
I think it's really important that companies understand how long their sales life cycle is.
Yeah.
So if you've got a sales life cycle of 9 months, you're not going to get results within 3 or 4 or 5. You've got to expect that it's going to take on average 9. Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes business is developed in quick, in quick order, and it's great. That's really good. But inevitably, things take much longer than you expect. So it's kind of counterproductive trying to build business in the kind of short term. But
if you don't, but the thing is, and this is the thing I find and talk a lot about, if you don't do the work, you certainly haven't got a chance of doing it. It's sort of like, as you know, my chance of getting abs or six pack are highly unlikely. But the point is, I always say, if you don't do the sit ups, you won't get the abs.
Yeah.
And it's the same in sales. You go back to your 100 calls. If you don't do the work, you're not going to get the result in 9 months' time or 6 months' time. Depends on what's needed. But,
Correct. Are you doing the setups then?
Does it look like it? As soon as this man's just beaten me on the golf course there and I bought him a new fry up for breakfast, then it's unlikely. But so talk to me, it's the Maztec. So how long were you at Maztec for?
I was there for 3 years. I learned a whole load about the sales process and that kind of relationship building side. And that was good. That was in Bristol. So 3 years.
And was it then you started Purple?
No, so then I moved to a company called IPL. Based,
of course it was IPL. I
in
forgot
Bath.
IPL.
And I had a similar sort of role, but very much focused on a certain type of industry, so in kind of defence and government.
That's right.
And I lasted 3 years there.
Was it sales that you did at IPL though?
Yeah, it was sales, but it was a lot of account management as well.
That's right.
So it was new business, but it was also growing some existing customers as well. So it's kind of similar to Maztec. But
yeah, and I remember when you did the stuff at IPL, because you were in Bath for a while and you used to enjoy it. But again, that was even a different. And one thing to mention is that Dave's. Most people, when people are selling, they sell on sort of small values. You were at the stage of selling very, very big, chunky contracts, weren't you, in those sort of deals? They were like massive sort of...
Sure.
Does it change your mindset, do you think, for sales people, the bigger the amount of money goes for a contract? So if you're dealing with someone for £100,000 versus 10,000, do you think your mindset changed in any way?
I think, I'm not sure about mindset, but I think you definitely have to think about your process a lot more. So you've got to think about buyers and who's influencing that buying decision and what their motivations are and what kind of person they are. And so just thinking through through that process a lot more if the value is a lot higher. So I always found that quite exciting because you're just becoming more intimately involved, and the stakes are higher as well. You know, you put a lot of time and effort in if you're going in for a bid that's, you know, quarter of £500,000 or £1 million rather than something that's worth 10k. So
the commission check's bigger as well.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah,
much nicer as well. But so IPL was great, and and I know that, was it 3 years? You said that she's like 7.5 years in. So and I always tell people a little bit of a story. I remember. So me and Dave flew to Australia for a friend's wedding. And we managed to get a sneaky upgrade. Thank you, Paul, if you're watching this. I think Paul did it. And we were sitting in business class, and we were you know, on the seats and knocking back a few drinks. And I remember, because it was about that time you were thinking of setting up the business, wasn't it? You were thinking of setting up a business.
Yeah.
And I remember vividly saying to you, "You sure there's enough business in the defence sector?" And you were like, "Yeah, pretty sure, mate. Pretty sure there's a lot in there." And of course, so talk to people about, you know, obviously I know, you know, we won't get into the detail too much, but you know, you built, and I know I was very proud when you were able to sell your business a few years back. You know, you spent 10 years building Purple, I guess. Was it 10 years?
Yeah, so in 2006 I started this company called Purple Secure Systems. I say started it, I co-founded it, so I had a business partner. We had this kind of idea to build a company that did software and systems engineering services in the national security, defence, government sectors. And so it was just the two of us that started out, and we kind of slowly built it over a period of 10 years. We sold the company after 10 years, actually.
Was it 10 years? Exactly 10 years?
10 years to the day. It was exactly 10 years when we sold it. And then I stayed on for 18 months after that. So I was with the company that bought Purple for a year and a half, and then I left in November 2017. So,
and when you look at how you built the revenue for Purple, because for the first 6-7 years, it was, you were. I remember, I know you and Jez had different roles, but you were the main, if you like, commercial salesperson, weren't you?
Correct.
How did because you were going after some bloody big companies that had most people would look at the buyers for some of these massive multinational companies and think, how the hell do I get into those companies?
Yeah.
What did you do to sort of start to get into some of, to make inroads into some of these guys?
So, in the early days, it was very, very hard because you're selling nothing. You're selling vaporware.
Yeah.
All you're providing is an idea. That was our first customer. We're trying to build this company. Would you be interested in engaging with us? So I'm always very grateful to the first customer of ours. And so yes, in the early days it was very entrepreneurial. It was very, we'll just try and build small bits of business. Yeah. And then as time went by, we took on slightly more, larger projects. And we were always referring back to what we'd achieved in, the past year or so. So we would approach a new client and say, we've done X, Y, and Z for this company. We provided this level of value. Would you be interested in having a discussion? Yeah. And we just, because we'd focused in on a niche market, because we knew and we understood what the dynamics of that market was and what it needed, then we were able to provide some potential value to those new customers. So it was very much, I always describe it as like pushing water uphill, and engaging with those, you're right, some of them were big, huge, big companies. And in the early days, it was always very difficult to get some of those barriers to entry. But when you get to 20 or 30 or 40 employees, suddenly you've got a bit of a presence, and the doors open much easier when you get to that sort of size. It was very, very difficult in the early days, and growth was growth, but it was slower growth.
And it's funny because I remember being friends on that journey with you, and when you did what you did, and I know that. Like you say, a lot of people look at the work that goes on, especially when people sell companies, and they think, oh great, look at him, he's having this and done this, but they forget the 5 o'clock starts, and they forget the early meetings. By the way, actually, I wanted to talk, I know it wasn't while you were at Purple, I don't think, the 7-minute meeting. I wanted to talk about, so one of the funniest things that there's a story that, so what's your shortest ever sales meeting, David?
Yeah, 7 minutes, yeah.
Come on, tell me more.
Yeah, so this was when I was at Maztec, actually, employer number 2, and I'd get given a lead, actually, an opportunity to go and visit this guy in London, and I shan't name the company, but I arranged to go and see him, And I hadn't really kind of done my research, and I was just kind of, well, come on, let's go on, and I'll just tell him loads about Maztec and da-da-da-da. So I turned up, and he let me through the door, sat down, didn't get me a coffee or anything. And he was kind of, well, you know, what were you here to discuss? And I said, well, I'll talk a little bit about Maztec, and I did.
Yeah.
I got about a few minutes in, and I kind of started asking him a few questions about, you know, his business, and he wasn't really very interested in telling me very much. And after a few questions, I just got to the point where I said, you know, should we carry this discussion on? And he just said no. So after 7 minutes, he ushered me out the door, and I drove all the way back from London to Bristol with my tail between my legs.
Oh my God! I remember talking and laughing with you about that like a long time ago. And you look at what the success you've had now, and you laugh at those things. But what do you think? You know, it's interesting, isn't it? Because one of the things about qualification I talk to a lot of people about is qualify your leads, and because your time then, all right, you were working for someone else, but your time in business is the biggest thing you've got. And I guess it taught you then to make sure you qualify leads before you even go and meet them.
Absolutely. I'd just not done the right thing at all there. You know, big mistake. I should have researched the company properly. I should have understood who he was, what his interests were, you know, everything about him, and turned up properly prepared. But no, but learning experience.
What any other funny sales stories that you've had from meetings, or when you were doing your stuff in the recruitment side of things? Any funny things you can remember? Anything obvious? That was the one I brought up to embarrass you.
That's quite hard to
beat that one.
Yeah, I mean, the way I view these, you know, the whole experience of the sales process is that inevitably there's always going to be things that don't work out in the right way.
Yeah.
The key thing is you've got to learn from them. So, and you learn from them, and you improve the process as time goes by, and you, as a result of that, improve your opportunity, the likelihood of you having success next time round. So
and it's a good point. And you mentioned a lot about process, and again, process is one of those things in sales that a lot of people are always boring, whatever else, but I talk about it not. You've got to have a structure to work with. Do you think a lot of, you know, you mentor again a lot of businesses now, do you think many of them struggle to put some of those processes in place, or they forget to put them in place?
Yeah, I mean, a lot struggle to put any process in place at all, and then some put the wrong process in place, etc., etc. So I mean, my view is get a process in place, but keep a lightweight one, keep it really just appropriate for what's needed, and allow, you know, some scope for you know, some change within that as well. It doesn't need to be rigid, but at least have something, and that will improve your chances of you know, building business as well. So
And what's, you know, so obviously, you know, in the time when you built Purple, there was lots of highs, lots of lows as well, but lots of highs and going through things. Can you remember the time when you were the most excited about winning a bit of business at Purple? Was there one in particular deal where you thought, oh my God, we've cracked something now? By getting to that point, we've there are quite a few actually, but one in particular I remember was probably about 7 years in, and we'd been up to that point we'd kind of been doing, you know, lots of 50, 100, 200k projects, and we put a bid in with a customer, a big end government client, and it kind of came to us a bit off the blue, outside of not really what we'd expected, and so we were like, well, let's give this a go, let's work really hard at it and follow the right process and engage with the right people and learn. And so we put our heads down and put in, it was a big old bid, much bigger than those numbers, and to our astonishment it kind of came off, and we were bidding against some big old players, and I remember thinking, oh my God, we've won this, and now we're kind of in the big league, as it were, competing with some of those guys. So that was enormously satisfying. But that was a real team effort. I mean, there were, you know, we must have had about 7 or 8 different people involved in the whole bid process from our side, and a lot of time and effort went into it. You must have had a big lime and soda that night.
Limes and soda.
I'm joking. David's, as you can see, David's the slim one, and I'm the chubby one. I would have probably celebrated with a sign that Dave's a healthier man than me. But no, I mean, your journey with Purple was incredible, and you built up such a brilliant business. And, you know, I know that you know, I look back but go back to the idea of niching, just talking about, you know, when we joked about what was on the plane. But again, one of the things that a lot of businesses struggle to do, and I made the mistake, as you know, in a previous business, is sometimes people feel that by going after one market, they limit themselves. But for you guys, it was incredibly successful, wasn't it? It was the right thing to do.
I see a lot of this when I'm kind of guiding and mentoring small companies now, is that the temptation is to just try and capture as much as you possibly can and go for lots of different things, because that feels a safe place to be. The problem is you're kind of watering down your message, and you're also not able to engage and understand your market and the buyers within that market, etc., etc. So I always try and encourage, even though it's sometimes counterintuitive, I always try and encourage people to focus and hone in on a much smaller set of potential customers, get to know them really, really well, and then target your marketing and your BD and account management effort towards those. So
it's such a good point, and it's something that, again, I learned the lesson of, and I say to people, again, anyone that I've worked with, I will generally say, if you focus on one space, you can become relevant to the buyer. You can actually because if you're someone that is just literally going after it and spraying anyone and anything, then you're the same as everyone else. The moment you start saying to someone, that whether it's an IT manager or, I don't know, a HR manager or whoever, a sales director, whatever it is, that you know exactly what they're going through, and you know their pain points, and you know exactly how they're feeling because you get their market, you're already ahead of the game, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, the empathy thing is a really, really big thing. So trying to understand and listen, ask the right questions, and actively listen to what they're trying to tell you, and probe and continue to probe, even if it feels somewhat uncomfortable sometimes.
Yeah.
So for me, anyway, that's a really, really big part of selling, especially kind of big sales selling.
And it's again, some of the stuff is music to my ears. The stuff that I talk about to people, demand, like you say, about probing, active listening, really being able to show empathy with people, to really think like your customers are going to think. And again, unfortunately, there's a lot of people, and hopefully, if you're watching this and you're thinking, do I do this? Just think about what your prospect is feeling in that moment. What are they going through? What are the challenges that they're going through in their world right now? Because if you're a salesperson that's only focused on yourself, you're going to struggle. And you have to in business, and you have to wherever you're selling into, you've got to think like them, haven't you? You've got to put yourself in their shoes and think, what are they going through now? What are their pain points? What's making that person go, this is causing me stress, and what's making that person feel happy?
Yeah.
So obviously, after 10 years, you sold Purple, and I know that that process was an interesting process for a period of time. But how did it feel when we spoke on the day that it was all done? But how did you feel when someone was wanting, and a big company, the company you sold it to was a big organisation, wanted to buy your business? How did that feel?
Yeah, great, obviously, fantastic, and the fact you've built something of significant monetary value is brilliant. But when going through the process, you're right, it was full on. But of course, there's that emotional tie as well.
Yeah.
And giving that up was quite a difficult thing, certainly for me, and to the people, because most of the people there.
Because how big was your team when you sold at the end? How many did you have in
so
the
when
end?
when I actually left, it was probably about 100 in total, including subcontractors, but mostly employees.
Yeah.
So and a lot of those people you've recruited right from the start. Many have come on as graduates, and you've seen them grow. So you've seen it all happen, and you know them personally, and some of their families and all the rest of it. So it's a very unusual process, being bought out and then ultimately leaving.
And knowing you as I do, I know you would have been concerned for the well-being of those people and what they were thinking, and because, like you say, they've had all this stability for a while with two founders that are directors, and obviously a management team that are running the business, and then suddenly they get this sort of news.
Yeah.
But it must have been quite.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember talking to you the day when you were sort of talking to them about it, and it was quite a nervy moment for you, wasn't it? I remember you saying you found it really difficult.
Absolutely. The buying organisation. And I've seen plenty of businesses been bought and then just fallen apart because the buyer doesn't understand actually what they've bought. So in our case, we were bought out by a big US organisation, but they had a UK arm, and they did similar sort of business already. So for the most part, they actually understood what was important and how to integrate that company within their the bigger mothership. So, of course, there were one or two hiccups on the way, and it's not that easy, but I think generally overall they've done a pretty good job at.
And is a lot of the team still in place?
Yeah, a lot are.
Which testimony actually to the fact, like you say.
Yeah, sure. Yep, absolutely. Yeah.
So I know I know you've sold Purple, you've done a number of different things now. Tell people that don't know you on the video, but you're mentoring people now. You do a lot of work at the University of West England, don't you, in terms of mentoring? How do you find mentoring compared to sort of running a business?
Yeah, that's good. I really enjoy that. It's especially I'm especially mentoring companies that are in the very early process of getting going, that entrepreneurial stage. They've got an idea and they're kind of using it as a concept and testing it in the market. Because I've been there and done it, it's really useful to be able to say, well, first of all, I understand how you feel, and secondly, maybe you want to think about this or maybe think about that, and maybe there's contacts that I know. So I really enjoy it. It's great, and there's some great in Bristol especially. There's some really fantastic companies, small companies that are sprouting up all over the place. So yeah.
And I know just on two small things here before we sort of get to the end of the conversation, but you obviously have invested in a couple of companies, and I only mention this because companies sometimes come to me and say, well, what do I need? I'm looking to raise investment. When you make investments in companies, what do you look for? What are the key things that you look for in a business that would make you go, not relevant for today, but just so for people to read or to listen to that and go, right, I need to take that into account. Well, as investors, because I know you're part of an equity club that doesn't. What are the key things that business owners should be considering if they're looking to raise investment for their business? What are the top 3 things that investors look for now when they're?
Well, it's always going to be about the fundamentals. So the market and what the market needs and why that is and all that kind of stuff. The financials, so what the projections for growth are. But for me, actually, personally, the thing that I really look at is the team, so the people, and what that leadership is like, or what that leader is like, and trying to get a feel for whether they're likely to be able to not only get the idea up off the ground, but as time goes by, build a team behind them that can continue that growth as well. So it's a very subjective thing. It's quite hard to kind of judge that, but that's what I look for anyway.
And it fits when I raise money in, for my previous business, I know exactly that. They want to know that they can back you, don't they?
Yeah.
You want to know that actually I can trust this person, I can feel like that they're going to help me get to where I want to get to. They get it, basically.
Yep.
And they get the culture angle of things, which is important. So, and in terms of, obviously sales, you help a number of businesses with, how do you think, small businesses feel about sales? Do you think many of them get it right? Do you think many of them sort of don't know how to do it, get there by luck? What's your general view on sort of a lot of the businesses?
That's a really good question, actually.
That time you had one. It's 30 minutes in.
It's taken a while.
Exactly.
So we were lucky in our business because we had 2 people running our company. There was me, who kind of understood I was the CEO, but I really understood the market and the sales process and account management and everything else. And I had a brilliant business partner who was really technical, very bright, brilliant on delivery. So the kind of supply side, so demand side and the supply side. So now a lot of the companies that I see and mentor now often have a really good idea or have a really good kind of delivery mechanism, but aren't quite so attuned into how to build business, how to create sales opportunities and take them through the pipeline and whatnot. So
how to nurture, how to build relationships.
Absolutely. So it's often quite. They should, absolutely. So it's really quite difficult for them to get their heads around it and they really need to very quickly, because in the early days, business is really fragile. When you're small, it's really fragile. Cash is often tight, etc., etc. So it's really important to get their heads around it quite quickly, and that's one of the things that I've managed to help out with a little bit. Yeah,
and I think in a lot of cases when I speak to companies, a lot of companies they think the business is going to fall in their laps, or they think that it's just going to happen, or they think that it's literally going to. yeah, or it's as if like it's going to happen by magic. You know, it's as if, you know, I say to people, it's like a lead tree. It's like, oh, I'm going to pick a fruit from the lead tree, and it's like, it's bollocks. It's just, you know, you've got to work for business, especially in the early stages. You've got to put the effort. You know, going back to what you said at the start, you know, you were doing 100. All right, I'm not saying everyone wants to do it, but one of the things that I always used to, you know, admire about you and from when, you know, you were doing Purple, is you were very diligent. You'd always be up early in the morning. I remember vividly talking to you about, you know, like, while I was doing my business plan, I'd be up early in the morning. You had three younger kids at the time. Yeah. You know, you didn't have a choice but to get up early in the morning, did you? But, but Archie and the kids were young. You didn't have a chance but to get up early in the morning and do your work. But a lot of people want to just suddenly expect it to fall into their lap. Well, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I always found actually is just segmenting your work into different, you know, hours and go. For me, I was often up at 4:30, and I would do an hour and a half to 2 hours before the kids would wake up, and that for me, then great, I've got that in the bank. So I'll do the kids and whatnot, and then disappear off to work, and then I can have another hour once I get in work. So I used to break the time up like that, and I've often found that segmenting it like that makes it much easier to be able to, because there's always going to be times, especially during the sales process, where you're thinking, oh my God, I really don't want to do this. This is hard yards. So breaking it up in that way, for me anyway, that worked really well.
But that's a really good example. And also the key thing is by breaking it up, you actually do make sure you spend time on those areas every day, isn't it? Yeah. It's good. Look, we're coming to the end, man. I'm really grateful because I know you don't do a lot of this sort of stuff, so it's really, you know, fantastic for me and an honour for me. But talk to me, you know, if I said to you, you know, for small businesses, top 2 or 3 things that you think are really important for them to think about when it comes to sales. You know, you built up a business and, you know, drove revenue in all the things that have achieved success in your previous roles. What are top sort of 2 or 3 things for people if they're watching this at the end going, how can I be more successful when it comes to sales? What would your tips be?
Cool, good question. I think perhaps the first one would be around that niche market thing. So to hone in and really work hard at who your customers are, why they're potentially buying from you, and focus on a much smaller set of potential customers rather than lots. I feel there's a lot of value in that. The second is once you've got a customer, absolutely and utterly look after them. So work really, really hard to look after them, because the scope for growth, I mean, depending on what sort of business you're in, but generally speaking, the ability to grow business off the back of existing customers is way higher than the new
customers really matter, right?
Yeah, customers really matter. That's right, they do. So those 2, I think.
And in terms of being an interpersonal skill from a sales perspective, anything you've noticed in the people that you work with now that you think, you know, you mentioned empathy as a term for listening.
I think there's a lot in that as well. I've met a lot of salespeople who are very, very comfortable in talking about themselves and their own company or whatever they're offering. But you don't meet many really good salespeople who really understand, you know, how to ask the right sorts of questions and how to probe, and when to sit back and listen and when to actually jump in occasionally and, you know, make the odd suggestion or idea. So that getting that balance right of you know, engaging with the customer. You know, you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth and all that stuff. I think that's really important.
Brilliant, mate. Well, look, we're coming to the end of the. It wasn't as bad as it. But, see, my driving.
We've actually survived.
You've survived my driving, Dave. This man, I have to say, being at university has seen me drive. Probably sometimes it's given me more laughable moments than anything else. My driving at university wasn't the greatest.
What about when you ran that old man over?
No, that wasn't my fault, and you know that, David. It wasn't my fault.
It was him, was it?
He knew he did. I was the night I was sober. He walked out, and I remember it vividly when he literally hit his head at the pavement. That was just for anyone that's watching this thinking, "Oh, I killed someone." No, there was an old man at university who walked out, pissed as a fart, and literally walked out in front of my car in the rain. But yeah, that was not a great evening, that one. But no, so my driving has got better, but my reverse parking, I haven't had to reverse today, so we're okay actually. But no, it's been really good, mate, to have you in the car and to go through some of this stuff. And like I say, you know, for those, Dave's a very modest man and someone that wouldn't make a big thing about what he's done, but to build a company and to the success that you've had over the last 10 years has been great. And so the future, you know, at the moment you're just, like you say, you're enjoying what you're doing with mentoring. You're basically just loving life, really, doing lots of different things.
Yeah, got a good balance of stuff at the moment. Lots of mentoring, a few investment things happening, which is good. Yeah, now starting to think about getting involved something a little bit more seriously. So let's see what the future brings.
See what happens. So, well, there you go. So we're coming to the end of Sales Conversations with Sales Experts. The next one in the who should we get in the next in the hot seat? Little Mike Lee. Little Mike Lee.
Yeah, come on. I'd like to see that.
We'd like to see that. No, but look,
it's a cushion for him.
You need a cushion. You need a car seat for little Mikey. If you're watching this, Mikey, I'm sure you'll love that. But look, mate, thanks ever so much. Real appreciated for me to give your time up today that you have.
Yep.
In fairness, you did beat me at golf this morning, and I did buy breakfast, but much appreciated, mate. It really is a great honour for me.
No problem.
So thanks ever so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed. For those of you watching Sales Conversations with Sales Experts, this has been David Harris, really good friend of mine, but a man that built a brilliant business. I hope you've enjoyed the video and you've enjoyed watching it. If you have, if you think you should be sitting where David is, please reach out to Alex or Monya at jameswhite.business, and we'd love to have a chat with you and find out about your sales knowledge and experience. But mate, thank you, mate. Awesome
You're
stuff.
welcome.
And this man knows his stuff, so listen to what he's got to say, top man, and become a real good sales expert over a number of years of careers. And now can do what he likes. He's plus he's a bandit at golf. But anyway, mate, really appreciate it, mate, and
No
thanks, appreciate it. Cheers, mate. See you soon, guys. Take care. Bye bye.